Thank you for joining us today here on Winging It, Unscripted Conversations with the Hot Springs community, broadcasting from National Park College. The intent of this NPC podcast is to have informal conversations with different community members as a way of understanding their work in our region and highlighting their connection with the college. Welcome, listeners, to the May 2025 episode of Winging It, Unscripted Conversations with the Hot Springs community. I'm your host, Wade Derden, president of National Park College. Before I introduce my guest today, let me just say that this month almost got away from me. My goal is to launch a podcast every month, but between the end of the semester and graduation, I almost missed that deadline. This month, we graduated over 530 college students with nearly 900 degrees and certificates. We also celebrated 112 GED and 15 apprenticeship completers, so it's been a big month for us. With all that said, I'm especially grateful to today's guest, Adam Webb, the Garland County Library Director, for agreeing to sit down with me here at the end of May on somewhat short notice. So thank you, Adam, for joining me today.
Oh, pleasure's all mine. Thanks.
So Adam and I have gotten to know each other this year, partly through Rotary and also as a delegate to Hanamaki, Japan, which was a good time. We had fun together.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it was quite a trip. We'll spare the listeners that trip. Adam, how long have you been at the Garland County Library now?
I just started my 19th year there this week.
Wow.
Yeah.
So how'd you get your start there?
I initially wanted to be an English professor. I'm a proud National Park graduate myself, back in 2005, I believe, and went to Henderson State University. I got a bachelor's in English, was going to go to graduate school for English. My last semester, I was 3 credits short, so 1 class, and the only elective that fit into my schedule was essentially an Intro to Library Sciences class. And I fell in love with it. Finished the class. It was my favorite class of my entire undergrad. Withdrew my application for grad school for English and started applying to library schools. I got a part-time job at Garland County, fresh out of college, and I've been there ever since.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Life throws you curveballs sometimes.
No kidding.
Oh, yeah.
No kidding. I think you just kind of have to be ready to roll with it.
Yep.
Well, what's the best thing about your job, Adam?
Oh, just being a public servant. I absolutely love working for the public. Mm-hmm. A lot of that was instilled even before, working at Garland County. I did 2 years in the AmeriCorps program and just fell in love with public service. Mm-hmm. And as Teddy Roosevelt called it, work worth doing.
Work worth doing. That's right.
Yeah.
Well, so you've had a lot of different roles, though, at the library. And so what's that sort of career progression look like for you?
Oh, man, I feel like I've done everything under the sun at the library. I started as a part-time clerk, so just your basic, check in and check out, reader's advisory. Somebody comes in asking for a book recommendation, and you send them to the right section. I was a teen librarian, which I think was my favorite job in my tenure there. So doing programs for teens, trying to keep them from falling off the cliff. Libraries do a great job of maintaining readers from about kindergarten till they turn around 12.
Right.
And then, teenagers have other priorities.
That's right.
Then we pick them back up later in life, usually when they have their own kids. Mm-hmm. But I love being a teen librarian because you're trying to get those kids interested and excited about reading and literature, and you do some unconventional stuff. We did video game tournaments very early on. Now it's kind of almost an expected service at a lot of public libraries to do video game programs because it is the most popular form of media these days. And so we were doing those back in 2008, 2009. And then I was systems administrator, then assistant director, and now the director.
It's interesting that your whole career has been there.
Yeah. I took a short side quest. I was the librarian of record for the Pine Bluff Jefferson County Library System as well. So in Arkansas, to receive funding from the state, you have to have a certified librarian at the helm. And Pine Bluff found themselves without a library director, but one of their assistants, Ricky, was going through library school. He just wasn't finished yet. Mm-hmm. So I got to do a lot of work there, see what a different library system was like. Their 5-branch library system, built a brand new main, and bounce ideas off of Ricky and back and forth. So I have some exposure to other library systems, but all my work so far, day in, day out, has been at the same one.
Well, I was thinking about what you just said, trying to attract teens and such. And, libraries are important to me. I have strong memories of the local library in Cabot where I grew up because my mother worked for a CPA accounting firm and right next door to the library. And during the summer when I was out of school, I was in the library stacks. I remember reading Old Yeller up against the wall, in the very back of that library. And the librarians knew me. And, I just came in and parked it back there. And in some ways, those books were my babysitters while my mom worked, you know?
Yeah, I had a similar upbringing, big working class family. My mom and dad were small business owners. They had 5 kids. Mm-hmm. And that math doesn't really work out to having a lot of expendable income.
Right.
So we spent all our time at the public library. And I grew up kind of out in the sticks. Mm-hmm. So I remember one of my first acts of independence was riding my bike, not telling my parents, because this is in the 80s and you can kind of get away with this sort of stuff, but riding my bike probably about 12 miles to the closest public library and spending the afternoon there and then riding back before I was missed.
Right.
You know,
that's really interesting. I also have memories of the ASUBB library. Like my first exposure to a community college was ASUBB. It's sort of the same thing. My mother, working at that firm, was trying to advance, so she took some courses there. And while she did, I studied in the library. I was, by that point, in high school, but not driving. And so I went along with her, and she was taking night classes, and I sat in the library and studied. I remember studying for Quiz Bowl. Like, I was the kid on the Quiz Bowl team that knew every single astronaut's name for us and the Soviet Union and what they did. And I couldn't tell you that stuff nowadays, but I do remember it.
On the topic of ASUBB, I'm sorry if this is not where he actually works, but if he does, I'm giving a shout out to my buddy Ron Russ, who's one of the librarians at ASUBB.
Oh, okay.
I'm 99% sure that's what his email signature says. But
well, cool.
Yeah.
Well, just thinking on a college campus, libraries are just really a central element to the college's educational mission. But a public library's mission is broader. And so I wonder if you might just discuss that mission. You've kind of already talked a little bit about it with the teen element there, but discuss that mission of Garland County Library and some of the other programming that it provides.
Absolutely. The mission of the Garland County Library is to promote literature to the citizens of Garland County and to help educate and inform the public. Libraries are really meant to be 2 things: a place where anybody, regardless of background, can come and educate themselves and better themselves, and to provide a public space, a public forum for people to come and simply exist or read books or participate in programs, research. You know, in our society, those spaces are becoming fewer and fewer.
Right.
It's a place where there's no expectation of buying something or doing anything really other than just existing. And so that's a big part of the library's mission these days, is just having the physical space where people can interact with other folks. For a lot of people, it's really the only place where they interact with people from different socioeconomic backgrounds.
Right.
And the library is a place where in the same day you'll see the richest guy in town and the poorest guy in town occupying the same area and doing the same thing. But outside of that, you know, we provide a lot of programs that help enrich people's lives, whether it's kids up to seniors. You know, we provide a free tax service alongside the AARP every year that provides, I think this year was close to $1 million in economic benefit back to the community through tax returns and not having to pay to get your taxes filed.
Right.
But outside of that, a lot of it is just educational and entertaining programs. So things like Hot Springs National Park coming and doing ranger programs that talk about different aspects of the national park, or the Historical Society talking about quartz mining, or the history of brothels on Central Avenue, you know, those sorts of things.
Well, I know I went to a jazz concert there recently because my daughter's in the Lakeside Jazz Band, and they did a little performance there. And so that side room that you have there for meetings, I've been in that room a dozen times for different things.
Yeah, I love that room. It's too small.
It is small. You're right.
Small.
It is small because you get a lot of groups that come through there.
We do. It gets capped out all the time.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then, you know, I mentioned Hanamaki. You had the wood toy museum that they have over in Hanamaki, brought some displays over for you all.
Yeah. They're hoping to come back this year and do it again, a bigger display. We're going to offer them that room. I don't know if it'll meet their needs specifically, but we'd be happy to have them again. And they're hoping to do that this fall. Yeah.
That was really cool. That was a good event, I thought.
I thought so,
when
too.
I stopped by just to see some of the people over there because we got to know them when we were in Japan, and they were swamped. And I told them, I know because I have a closet full of Thomas the Tank Engine wooden, trains from when my kids were little. I know those things are attractive to kids.
We've had an interesting conversation with the public about having them back again. They said, well, how does this dovetail in with the library's mission? The state of Arkansas has made it very clear that there's a big concern about the consumption of media, whether it's through your phone or just screens in general, and just trying to focus kids on other stuff. I mean, it doesn't get more screen averse than a wooden toy museum, if you ask me.
Right.
And the kids who came all loved it. I mean, I didn't see a bored kid there for the entire, I think it was almost a month that they were at the library. Those kids were just enthralled with playing with just physical stuff.
I know, it's very tactile.
It really is, and there's something about it. I mean, the smell of that cedar wood that they use for it, it's just very just immersive. So, I mean, we're happy to be a part of it.
I know I had a good time at the Toy Museum in Hanamachi. It was so fun and so imaginative.
Did you find the chicken and the eggs?
No, I did not find the chicken. And I wallowed all through those eggs looking around.
They said it's there. I haven't found it either.
Yeah. My favorite thing, they had trees basically with holes in them, and you had a little magnet, and you put the magnet in the holes in the trees, and it would pull out a worm or something like that. And it was all wood, and it was fascinating.
Yeah. The one word that I came away with from that museum was charming.
Yes.
It was just a charming experience.
It was a charming experience. That's exactly right. So, Adam, what does the future hold for the Garland County Library?
I'm really hoping expansion within the next year or two.
Okay.
We are an anomaly in the state of Arkansas in that we are a big county that only has one public library. The next county down that has that sort of model only serves about 40,000 people. And Garland County serves 100,000.
Right.
There are a lot of rules of thumbs when it comes to libraries. You probably know this. There's probably the same sorts of metrics for community colleges for, how much physical plant you need, for how many students you have, that sort of stuff. I mean, we have the same metrics, and we are so far behind on everything. Hot Springs Village, that area has about 20,000 people and no public library. It's the biggest population center in Arkansas that doesn't have a public library.
And we used to serve the public, and we had to kind of stop for that very reason. We just don't have the resources to do that. Because public library, as you've mentioned, there are people who come in, they need the computers, and, they're searching for a job, they need resume help, and we simply could not do that and serve our students, especially when we moved to a residential college.
Right.
And so the volume of people in our library in the last few years, especially since becoming a residential college, has increased substantially. And we have 3 full-time librarians now when we used to have 2, and we need that. And we just couldn't meet the public's need as well. And our library still is too small, really, for what we do here.
I'm absolutely with you. Whenever I tell people how many folks come through the door in a given year, they just have no clue.
Yeah.
I mean, it's even with all the digital resources that we have now, and we're doing home delivery and we have remote delivery services, we still have 250,000 people through the door every year.
Yeah.
And that's a low estimate. We actually have 2 sets of people counters. One is integrated in our security gates, and the other one is kind of an overhead camera, which doesn't always pick up everybody. If a parent's carrying a kid or holding a hand, it kind of counts them as one person. But it's somewhere between 250,000 and 1/3 people through the doors every year.
That's amazing.
In a county with only 100,000 people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty amazing. So expansion is on the horizon, hopefully. I don't want to get into your business, but I mean, what does that look like? I mean, you initially talked about expanding the current site and remodeling to hold more, but you're also talking about maybe extension libraries.
Yeah. We're looking at one way or the other becoming a 3-branch library system within our long-range plan, which could be, for a facilities plan, usually it's about a 10-year plan.
Yeah.
And we're really evaluating the main library as it is right now. The building's getting older. A lot of the systems kind of behind the scenes are aging out, and we need a lot of retrofits and renovations when it comes to HVAC systems, plumbing, electrical. The only thing really that we can do as far as expanding our square footage is a mezzanine structure. We had a conditions needs assessment done by our architects. We have an architect contract with Taylor Kemkus here in town. And by code, the only thing we can do is a mezzanine that's open on 3 sides.
Okay.
The cost for that per square foot is so astronomical that it's almost impractical.
Right.
Added to that, all of the expenses of moving out of the library, temporarily moving back in, it's just becoming more and more clear every day that that's not a viable project. So the other thing we're looking at right now, and this has been reported on, I'm not giving you the scoop or anything, is we're looking at possibly building a new main library on the Majestic site. There are a lot of hurdles there, but we did a bunch of public feedback sessions and focus groups and things, and that was something that just kept getting suggested over and over again was, why isn't the library downtown? It's downtown in almost every other city in America.
Right.
And a lot of people identified the Majestic as a possible good location, so we're looking at what that might look like.
Yeah.
Doing some renderings of it, seeing maybe what would fit on that footprint, and who knows?
Yeah, well, that's interesting. Well, I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't ask you about your perspective on the importance of NPC to Garland County. After all, I'm the president of this college. I have to plug it a little bit. And you're a graduate, so that gives you firsthand experience and knowledge.
Well, firsthand knowledge, it did all right by me. I've actually come back and taken a few continuing ed classes as well over the years. I love National Park College. It was a great experience for me, especially being a non-trad student. I was raising a kid at the time and working a bunch of part-time jobs while I was going here. The schedule was accommodating. It didn't put me in the hole financially going here. Right. And it really gave me the skills and tools to succeed further down the academic road. As far as its impact in the community, it's a wonderful partner with us anyway. The times that we have cooperated or partnered with the community college for, when you guys have job fairs here, we've gotten great folks out of that. Your work study program, which we're resurrecting right now, got us one of our full-time employees who is just doing a great job. And, I can't talk about it outside of my kind of umbrella of the library, but I feel better as a citizen knowing that we have a strong community college here in our community that is providing workforce training and education and enrichment and betterment. We're all kind of hitting the same notes in the library and the college as far as the value that we are trying to return back to the folks who live here.
Well, I appreciate that perspective. Thank you for that. We're glad to call you an alumni. It's good.
You can put me on your brochures if you want.
We'll just put your face everywhere if you want. We'll just put you on some billboards maybe, Adam. Look, he made it.
Yeah.
So I'm going to put you on the spot with a technical question.
Okay.
How many physical volumes, do you think you have in the library?
160,000.
I knew you would know that.
Give or take. On any given day.
Yeah.
Some things get chewed by the dog since yesterday, and I don't know how many books they've bought today, but we have about 160,000 physical items.
Of those 160,000 books, which one's your favorite?
My favorite, I'll tell you right now because I read it every year, and this comes from my time dealing with teens and kids, The Graveyard Book by Neil Gaiman.
Okay,
It's a wonderful little story. I read it every October. It's a great, get you in the mood for Halloween. A retelling of The Jungle Book, where instead of a kid being raised by jungle animals, he's raised by ghosts.
Yeah, it's a fascinating story. I read it. I went through a phase with my kids, like Coraline and some of those. It was interesting little books, you know.
It's a light read. I usually listen to the audiobook. I read it over a weekend. It never lasts long enough for me. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm a nerd. I'm a sci-fi nerd, so I read the original Dune often. Like every other year or so, I'll pick it back up. And I don't necessarily read the whole, because there's a ton of those books now.
And they're still coming.
Being a nerd, I've read most of them. But that original one, I just am always fascinated by it. So
that's a favorite too. I've got that. it's more of a display than anything, but I do grab them every now and then. I have a small trade paperback display of sci-fi books on my nightstand.
Oh, okay,
and,
cool.
And Dune's one of them I have on there.
Yeah.
I also have the novelization of Back to the Future, which I've never even opened. I know.
That's funny.
It just looks nice on the shelf.
I don't really read novelizations of movies.
I don't either, but that one it just struck me as kind of funny and odd that they did a novel tie-in to Back to the Future.
Yeah. I guess really the only book like that I've read is 2001 by Arthur C. Clarke, because that novel actually came after the movie, if I recall correctly. It was kind of a script that he worked with, and then the novel itself was sort of after the movies.
I'm filing that away as my thing I learned today.
Well, you'll have to verify. Because I could be wrong, Adam. I'm not, because he had a short story called The Sentinel in the 50s or so, which I think was sort of the impetus for that movie. And so then he fleshed that out into a novel after helping with the script.
Yeah.
So,
and you can't go wrong with Kurt Vonnegut.
Oh, I know.
You know, I mean, he's probably the author I read the most.
I return to him a lot, and I read Steinbeck a lot. I've been on a big Steinbeck kick. We went to Monterey a few years ago, went by his house, and, something about Cannery Row and East of Eden. I'm reading, actually, Sweet Thursday right now. So,
if you were to guess how many copies of Steinbeck books I have in my car right now, what would you guess?
Oh, I don't know.
Turning the tables on you, asking a question.
6?
I've got 10 copies. Somebody dropped off some book club sets of Mice and Men and Grapes of Wrath.
Oh, okay.
And I bought 5 copies of each. I'm going to put them in some little free libraries around town.
That's cool.
Just to keep them circulating.
This past week, when I went and picked up Sweet Thursday from our library, I almost got Grapes of Wrath. I can't bring myself to go back to it. That's a really hard book.
It's a tough read.
That's a heavy weight, and there's plenty of heavy things going on in the world right now. It's hard to read heavy things sometimes.
Yep, you are completely right about that.
Yeah. Thank you again for joining me today, Adam. And, listeners, I can really attest to Adam. He has a real heart for service to this county and community. So thank you, listeners, for tuning in to the Winging It podcast, and I hope you will tune in next time. And remember, there is a place for you at National Park College.